Good.
All right. Laura has joined and we're recording. So, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here today. This is a specially scheduled meeting of the Engineers Committee of the Architects and Engineers Board. Today is April 28th, and it appears as though we have a quorum for this meeting. So at this time, Mr. King, if you wouldn't mind giving us a call to order.
Sure. This is Steve King. I'll call this meeting of the Engineering Committee to order today, and I suspect is our only order of business is to go over what Maria sent out to the committee members.
Yes, sir, it is, and we'll get to that momentarily. If I could, real quick, I'm going to take a quick roll call for the record, and then we'll move into the statement of necessity, and then we'll just proceed with the legislative proposals. You all should have received those. I know some of you have commented and sent your comments back to Maria already, so appreciate that. But let me take a quick roll. So Rob Barrick. All right, Mr. Barrick is absent today. Mr. Bursai.
Here.
Mr. Campbell.
Here.
Mr. King.
Here.
Mr. Heathcote.
I'm here.
All right. Maria, would you give us a statement of necessity, please?
Yes. Sorry about that. I don't know if anybody was, y'all all kind of cut out for a good minute there. So anyway, I'm back now. I haven't missed anything. This is a specially scheduled meeting of the Tennessee Board of Architectural and Examiners Engineer Committee, which is taking place by electronic means utilizing WebEx teleconference application on Wednesday, April 28th, 2021. Notice that this meeting was properly posted to the board's website. Because there is not a physical quorum present, a statement of necessity is read into the record and filed with the Tennessee Secretary of State as required by statute. 2, if a physical quorum is not present at the location of a meeting of a governing body, then in order for a quorum of members to participate by electronic or other means of communication, the governing body must make a determination that a necessity exists. That determination must include a recitation of the facts and circumstances on which it was based. Further, TCA 844-108A3 defines necessity as matters to be considered by the governing body at that meeting, require timely action by the body, that physical presence by a quorum of the members is not practical within the period of time requiring action, and that participation by a quorum of the members by electronic or other means of communication is necessary. The purpose of this meeting with members attending by teleconference is to discuss legislative proposals that are time sensitive. We have deadlines before our next regularly scheduled meeting. And because of the governor's executive order regarding virtual meetings, the committee members did not have enough time in advance to plan travel as it expired yesterday. So the WebEx teleconference is being utilized in order to provide the most safe and efficient manner of meeting. All voting will be conducted by roll call.
Okay, thank you, Maria. With that, Mr. King, would you like to proceed to the agenda?
Very well. Like I said, I think the item we have today is to review and discuss the document that Maria sent out. So I think maybe the thing to do is just ask Maria to summarize and then let the committee members discuss it. Is that okay?
That sounds great to me. Thank you. So I hope you all have that document that I sent out. And I worked on this out and, really did a great job of, pointing out what changes needed to be done in some areas. And then I worked with Glandorf on this. And yeah, I just included the comments so you all could have reference for what we were doing where. and I received feedback from Ricky in 2 areas. We can get to those and discuss, but I hope you all have time to review, and if you have any questions, then I'm happy to answer and discuss and make changes. Part of the reason that this is so expedited is because we received word that my deadline to have these changes to Chief Counsel to review is May 3rd. And so we have just a tight deadline internally for. Just to recap on the process, this is board attorneys, will submit this to the department, the administration for review. The department then kind of evaluates all the legislative proposals that are coming from the department as a whole. That's, reg boards and insurance and all the other areas. And then they select and prioritize what, amendments the department will submit to the governor's office. So this is how this process works. And yeah, like I said, quick turnaround deadline for this. So I am happy to answer any questions you have, or make any changes before I make a final submission.
Maria, this is Alton. I've got 2 maybe quick ones. One is a
Okay.
text and context up under A1.
Uh-huh.
Basically at the end of where we struck through, all the red that was struck through. I think from a tense standpoint, that should read after passing an examination prepared by NCAAS.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. I'll make that change.
It's okay. And then the second one, and I think we all agreed on this under section or part 3, graduation from approved engineering technology curriculum. It reads, a graduate of an ABET ETAC accredited engineering technology curriculum of 4 years or more, approved by the board as being satisfactory, blah, 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 from an institution with an ABET, postgraduate degree in engineering from an institution with an ABET EAC accredited undergraduate engineering program. I think we agreed that if we were going to allow a master's, that it would be from a program that had not ETAC, but EAC accredited undergraduate program.
Yes, and Ricky pointed that out in his edits as well. So I will go ahead and I've made that change for you all. Thank you for pointing that out.
Sure. And Maria, I believe you said that Ricky had 2. What was his other one?
So it's underneath the 62-2 402, I believe. Let me just pull that up 1 second. I have several documents open, so I'll make sure I'm looking at the right part. Yeah, 62-2 402, and under the engineer intern. So it says there, it's blue underlined, or a postgraduate. And his suggestion is to delete degree there.
Yeah, I was thinking that would be kind of equivalent to the language that where you started that phrase, where you're saying a graduate in a curriculum of 4 years or more, or a postgraduate, which is a graduate, somebody with a master's, or a postgraduate in a curriculum, that it would put the 2 subjects being kind of the same language there.
That is helpful. Thank you, Ricky.
Yeah, Ricky, this is Alton. I would think that maybe what we want to do is say a graduate degree in a curriculum of 4 years or more leading to a baccalaureate degree in engineering, or a postgraduate degree in a curriculum. I agree with the change, yeah.
That could go that way too.
So because the language as it stands right now is a graduate in I think it might be best to delete, like you said, just so it flows, and then we're just adding there to what the existing language says.
Yeah, it kind of matches what's up in one of 62-2-401, where it uses that same term, a graduate or a postgraduate. And I was just thinking it would stay consistent with that language. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Anybody else have a comment?
I've got a comment that I thought Maria did a great job getting all of our intentions put into this, into these statutes. It looks pretty clear to me.
Thank you, Ricky. I will say you all certainly laid the groundwork for me to do that, and I appreciate, that comment. And it was a task, but once I got it all on, on one document, that really helped. And it all kind of fell together. So, and it was very helpful to listen back on the recorded committee. So much time into this, so definitely a group effort.
I do have, this is Alton, I do have another question. And again, I look for it in my old documents. Where in either the laws or rules do we talk about a person with the master's degree and the commensurate experience being eligible to sit for the exam? Do you know, Maria, what section that's in?
With the what? I'm sorry, what the commensurate experience you said?
Yeah, the master's, using the master's going towards the being able to sit for the exam.
I can look.
Maybe they did not graduate with a degree in engineering, an undergraduate degree in engineering, but they did graduate with, or they did acquire a master's in engineering from an approved program. Where in our laws or rules does that say that's considered?
Yes. That is in
suitable.
The rules. It's in the rules under 0120-01.10. It's in the education experience requirements for engineers.
Right.
And it's 2A1.
Got it. Okay. Very good. Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. That was not on the one that I had.
Okay, gotcha.
And what does it say?
It says graduation with a master's degree or higher in engineering from an approved curriculum.
What about the length of experience?
That's up to 1 year.
No, Maria, I think that's, I don't think that's what Steve's asking. He's asking how much, if you did not graduate with an undergraduate degree in engineering from an approved university, but you went and got a master's from a university that did have an approved program, and if you got the master's in engineering, how much experience do we require that individual to have?
Oh, gotcha. I'm sorry, I did misunderstand that question. So right now, the language that we've included, it's requiring 8 years or more of experience. Does that answer the question correctly? It's in
No,
statute under A2.
I didn't hear what you
Steve?
said, Maria. You said that the length of experience is in where?
If I'm I don't know if I'm understanding the question correctly, but the language that I'm proposing is 8 years. If you have, if you don't have, this is for the engineering technology, you have to have a master's in 8 years.
And Maria, I'm sorry, the one that you were referring to is where we would grant what my question was, and I think Steve's follow-on question to that. What I was asking is, somewhere we had talked about in your modifications to my original stuff, up in A1, 62-2-401 A1, you added or a postgraduate of an engineering curriculum of 2 years or more, which you have said allows for the master's degree. And this is somebody from an approved engineering curriculum, not an engineering technology curriculum. So let's make that really clear.
Okay, gotcha. Sorry. Yes.
Okay.
Now I'm on the same page with you all. What
I was asking is, where in our laws and rules we had somewhere, and we've had this discussion a lot, and I couldn't find it. Where in our laws and rules does it say that if you graduated with a degree in, let's say, biology, and then you went and got your master's in engineering, where does it say that that's an allowable path to licensure? And what Steve is asking, if we do allow that, I think, Steve, you correct me if I'm wrong, you're asking what's the time, how much experience does that person have to have? Is it still 4 years, like somebody who got an undergraduate degree in engineering?
Mm-hmm. So right now, this was my understanding in writing this part of it, that I wanted to allow and make it clear that the board wanted to allow master's programs to qualify in the event that the undergraduate wasn't, the engineering as approved by the board. So it's pretty broad in that it says, postgraduate. It doesn't have to be master's. It could be, what came to my mind was the guy with the PhD. So that wasn't just a master's, so I wanted to make it broad, postgraduate. And it says that's going to be approved by the board as being a satisfactory standing. So my thought was, let's put this in the statute broadly, and then if this gets passed, we can pick up a rule where the board could then, you all could tell me what would qualify. And we could kind of tease out, I remember like Robert bringing up the Louisiana board, and they had very specific guidelines for what postgraduate degrees, would qualify, and the board would accept. So that's kind of where my thought is on this, but I'm certainly open to feedback or edits on that part.
Chairman King, this is Robert Campbell, if I may jump in for just a second.
I've been waiting on you, Robert.
First of all, Marie, I will echo what several have said. This is much more concise, and it's a testament to why we need to do engineering and attorneys need to do language like this. So I hope the board will remember that in the future. Second thing, my only issue with this whole situation is we potentially will have a law passed in April of 2022. We will then have to start on a rule to codify what we mean after, when it gets passed, which could take another year and a half at the rate that they have been going. So the board could really be in limbo for almost 2 years from passage of a law while we are getting this rule fleshed out. I want to ask the board's opinion on that, because once this gets passed as a law, we will have an application from a master's degree or a PhD person, or maybe from an ETAC technology, that we may not have all the other pieces together to give us the right kind of guidance, and then that gets us in a little bit of a bind. If I'm looking at this correctly.
Well, Robert, I agree with you. I guess I'm just wondering when we talk about the master's degree in A1, I'm referring to a master's without the ABET EAC undergrad degree. The way if I had a master's degree in engineering and I read that, I would think I could come to the board and apply. But I guess, Maria, because you say approved by the board as being satisfactory, is that what gives us the authority for rulemaking?
It does, and that language is very discretionary, even if the rule didn't exist. So maybe, in that limbo, Robert, I definitely hear your concern there, but hopefully in the interim, we could be formulating what is acceptable and what's not, and be able to use that as guidelines and then, make that rule. But ultimately that decision would fall on in your hands to decide whether or not that would, meet the criteria as being satisfactory. But I hear that concern. I'm just trying to think of a way, because, there have been situations several times I've been with the board of, wanting to approve someone who's overly qualified, but it's just the language wasn't very clear that was allowable. And so I definitely want you all to have that discretion. And I thought this might be a good path to do that. But, I do hear you and your concerns about not having the specifics of it all worked out.
Steve, I've got a comment.
Go ahead, Ricky.
Okay. Robert's right on the timing, what he's describing, and I think the language of the statute, though, that proposed language, puts it on our shoulders to use our discretion on whether the master's degrees and the other education part is acceptable. I wonder if, because the rulemaking will take that amount of time, like Robert said, whether it's a year or whether it's 2 years, would it be, we may not need this, but would it be helpful for us to write a policy? I know we've been slowly getting rid of our policies and making them into rules, but this would almost be the opposite direction. We write a policy to help ourselves deal with applications that are going to come in the interim, and then the rule would kind of be based on the policy that we write, thinking that we can come up with a policy probably in a meeting or two, and then go through the rulemaking on it, and at least we would have some guidance in the interim. Anyway, that's just a thought, to maybe use a policy that could even be put on our website.
I like that idea, Ricky, just from a legal perspective. I mean, that's kind of like what my thought was, that you all could, have criteria that you used, and you could reference, and then that would become the rule. So yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it.
This is Robert again, and I'm not disagreeing. I'm just, I suppose, maybe playing a little bit of devil's advocate on this, because I understand that we can have a policy in place and we can do exactly what we're talking about doing, but it does leave us potentially open for somebody who doesn't get the answer that they want, because remember, the policy will not have been vetted by the public, because it will have not gone through the rulemaking process. It'll go through our process, but not necessarily the rulemaking process. And so we get someone who has that we say, well, your master's degree doesn't qualify. They can then, in the interim, approach a legislator just like they have in the past. And we are in a kind of I think the programming term is a do loop. And that's the only thing that comes to my head right now, so I apologize. But if that's the only way, that's the only way. I understand and that, but we do have a risk here, from the board's perspective, that we need to recognize.
Is there just this out of curiosity, and Robert, I certainly appreciate these comments because I think it's super important. I was going to ask is there language that we could add as a qualifier before that, or a postgraduate of an engineering curriculum? So is there, in the way that we have ABET, ETAC, and, all those different qualifiers for some of the language that we could add there to make you all more comfortable that this is, it's kind of more specific? Is there anything that we could add there, or is there anything that you all would certainly want to exclude, there too, that could, so it's not specific and it doesn't take the research and time that we would have to make, make a full rule on it, but it would offer you more level of comfort in that, these applicants that are approaching the board with postgrad degrees in engineering, they meet X criteria, and that makes you feel like they are credible applicants.
If you don't mind, let me speak to that really quick. I hope really quick, but I really like the way that you have left this open, and I think that's smart. I think it's what we have probably needed, to have the law with a little broader category to it. So I would hate to put language in there that may limit us one way or the other, if we kind of like the direction that we're heading in here. My thought is there a way to have this law passed, but maybe have a start date in 2023? It becomes effective, and I think I've seen that before, where a law doesn't become effective immediately, but has a beginning time frame. And I may be misremembering, but that's what I would prefer, Maria, instead of trying to doctor language in the law that kind of holds our handcuffs us a little bit. I would prefer if we could do something that put that a little bit more in the future, the activity, whatever, the start of this law that gives us that cushion.
That makes sense for sure. I will look into that more specifically. I am familiar with the rulemaking process. I've had rules that, become effective on, 2023 and that kind of thing. But I will say with the legislation, I have to look into this a little bit more. Some of this is, not some of this, most of this is out of my control as far as, who has the final say on this. But, some laws are effective July 1, and that's the beginning of the state's fiscal year. But then a lot of laws I see are effective, like, for for this year. It was a 2021 law, but it's effective Jan 1, 2022. So I'll have to talk to maybe the governor's office with this, or somebody internally who can kind of give me a little bit more guidance, and I'll definitely make a note of that. And this is something that happens, Robert, I've seen in rules, is that, not rules, in the legislation, is that, this law is effective immediately, upon signing for the rulemaking process. So what would happen is, if this became if this law was passed and signed by the governor, say April, then I could proceed in a rulemaking hearing for you all, and we'd be good to go. And I know you all have had rules that take longer than usual. The metric for rulemaking is 9 months. So hopefully, I try to stay on top of these as best as I can. So theoretically speaking, say May, April, June, you've got the go ahead. I could do the rulemaking hearing, and then that rule would become effective, Jan 2023. Is that right? Yes. So that is a possibility. I'm not making any promises, but I can definitely make notes to say this is how it would best work out. So I don't know if that makes you feel better, but
No,
it's a possibility.
Yeah.
Robert, this is Alton. I want to make sure I understood your question. Were you on a parallel course? Were you concerned that these laws would be enacted, but the rules wouldn't necessarily be in place yet to parallel the laws?
Hey, Alton, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but yes, sir. That's so let me give you just, well, let's use decoupling as our test case, correct? The law is passed, but we don't have necessarily universal buy-in from the engineering community at large that's the way it should go. So in theory, we could have this law be passed, and if somebody doesn't get down into the weeds, they probably don't. It doesn't use the word decoupling and all this, and it doesn't get to whatever. But in the interim, we're also working on a rulemaking hearing that goes out for public comment that does specify that a little bit more. And then all of a sudden, we have people from other places applying for licensure that I suppose that we would have to give them under the law when the rule's not totally fleshed out yet. I think I may be wrong, but I have a feeling we're going to get some resistance from different places within the engineering community just based on what we've seen with decoupling. And I hope I answered your question, Alton. I probably went off on a tangent.
But no. I understand. Yeah, you did. You answered the question. I guess my point is, parallel to this, as you know, when I did this, and Robert, as you correctly pointed out, I demonstrated my bungling incompetence at being able to do this.
Not incompetence, Alton. Not incompetence.
But regardless, in addition to the modifications to TCA 62-2-401, we also reviewed the parallel modifications to the rules that we would need to match, I suppose, the Section 62 component. So we're partway down the road. My assumption is, again, somebody significantly more competent than me could put the rules into a format that all of us could review over the next several months and come up with something that all of us understand and can support, and then therefore explain to the various engineering societies that we want to review this, and hopefully concurrent with the law becoming law, the rules could also be simultaneously enacted, well, I guess approved by our committee and subsequent to that, our board.
And ultimately,
We would have to continue to work same as we have.
No, I will agree with you on everything you said, except I think we will agree internally as a board. But we have been explaining now decoupling for 4 or 5 years, and I think we as a board think it's probably fairly innocuous. But there are those in the engineering community that don't, and they will have the opportunity during this rulemaking process to make their comments and concerns known. And this is a big deal. I mean, we're changing several pieces of the law, and we will have, so I think internally we can take care of what needs to be taken care of. Again, we've got very good legal help, we've got great staff, we've got all that, but it's I'm just using decoupling as my baseline. We have outside forces that will have to weigh in on this as well. And I just don't know how smooth that goes. And again, potentially we could have a law sitting out here, and then there's a lot of resistance to what the rule is. And it really lengthens the time that it would take to get something satisfactory on the books. So that again, I'm not trying to be ornery or obstinate or anything. I'm just trying to be as pragmatic as possible.
Aren't those same individuals or groups that would be opposed to it if we presented it to them in the rules? Wouldn't they similarly have a voice at the rulemaking hearing for the law, the changes in the laws?
Well, their voice in the law change would be to their legislator. It would not be to us.
I know, but again, we'll probably go through that before we'll go through any sort of a presentation or request for review from the professional societies. So we may have some feedback or some indication about where we might get pushback on this, and as a result, we may want to amend the law and subsequent to that, amend the rules. I guess my point is, we would have time or some time to do that if it takes 9 months to go through the process.
And sorry, I don't mean to monopolize, but yes and no, because the rule actually will not be, this law will not, even though it's in the package, will probably not be filed until the session begins. We may get some word of it in advance or whatever. So in reality, we only probably have 3 or 4 months to have those conversations, and that's during the heat of a legislative session. And I mean, again, we'll do whatever. I'm not against it. I'm just wanting to point out this is a fairly big deal. And again, using decoupling as my baseline, there are a lot of pieces that are still out there and groups and things to come together.
Gentlemen, this is Michael.
Second.
Alton, just 1 second. I wanted to make a point real quick because the statutes don't currently provide for this. There would need to be a statutory change first before you all would be able to entertain a rule change regarding these issues. Because if the statute doesn't, okay.
Well, I think we understand that. I think, again, we probably are talking about maybe these things occurring close to concurrently as soon as the law changes, enact a rule change. I guess my point was, like Robert said, this really probably won't occur until the next legislative session. And during that period of time, we can craft the rules the way that we want to. We've already got, granted, rudimentary and not competently assembled, but we have time to do that and present that to the various engineering societies for feedback and review even before the rules ever get to the state legislature. So we have some period of time to get input both ways, one on the rules and one from the laws, before any of this is ever really enacted. So wouldn't we want to, I guess my point is, wouldn't we want to continue down the path and go ahead and get the rules modified to sort of match the intent of the law, and then present that information to the various the professional societies for their review and feedback?
That works. And sorry, this is Maria. I just wanted to jump in for a second and say, I think that works well. And, part of what takes, the rulemaking process so long is getting it, ready to go for filing. And so, if we can cut that time on the back end, like you said, Alton, and just have it ready to go and ready for filing pending the effective date of the statute, or, when the statute change becomes enacted, then I think, there's no problem with that.
I think if we do that and we get it completed, then we'll be able to get it to the professional societies and invite their feedback and input, and that gives us a long period of time to go through this deliberation with all of them, but both explaining the why that we're doing it, and also the how that we're doing it.
Absolutely. And I do just want to say one thing, and this is not to be a Debbie Downer, but just to be realistic and let you all know what I know, that there is a chance that, the statute change might not happen with all the work that we've put into it and everything like that. Like I said, sometimes it's out of our control. So that, I would hope that would not be the case, but I do just want to be realistic about that possibility. If maybe other legislation takes precedent, from the department. But as far as, Michael and I work together, and hopefully, we're good advocates for the board, and that, we'll present this. And so that is just one little caveat that I would hate for us to, just be 100% this is going to happen, and then put all the work into the rule change and have to say, okay, well, we might have to revisit this next year. But anyway, I just kind of want to put that disclaimer out there. There again, I hope that will not be the case, but
Maria,
we don't know.
Maria and Michael, this is Casey. Am I allowed to speak real quick?
Hi, Casey.
Hi. Am I allowed to say something? Is that okay?
If the chairman will allow it.
Okay with me, Casey, go ahead.
All right, thanks. So my thought is we should know by November-ish whether or not the administration is picking up, is going to include this information, these law changes in the administration package next year. I think that there's been enough discussion about this that should the governor for some strange reason decide not to do that, there's really nothing that says that we could certainly find we file bills all the time that are not administration bills. I've been talking about this issue with the members of GovOps for a couple of years. They know that the board is working on some changes, and they know that we have been discussing it in our industry for a long time, and so should that happen, there can be a plan B. I would also say something along the lines of Alton, and this, I don't mean this in the wrong way, or I don't mean to say that this would happen, but I think getting some buy-in on what you all are going to propose in that legislation is probably a good idea, because what you don't want is to have the direction that the associations give me to be counterproductive to what is in the governor's package. I think it sure is a lot easier to pass laws that everyone is agreeable on. So somehow, knowing what's coming, I think, is not a terrible idea. That's all I
Steve,
have
this
to
is
say.
Ricky. I can.
Go ahead, Ricky.
Okay. Going back just a bit, I agree with what Robert said about our statute. I think we ought to keep it broad and worded like Maria has it now. I don't think we should add the detail in the statute, because yes, I'm worried about what Robert said he was worried about in terms of maybe getting a challenge in the interim, but I'm more worried about putting in a lot of detail in the statute and having that get in front of the legislature. I think the least change we can make, and as broad as it can be, is the best there. Secondly, I think the order of things is, as everybody said, the statute needs to come first, and then the rule. And I don't think we can do much about it. But it sounds like we've got from basically now to the end of the year to get in front of the engineering societies to get feedback. And that's a length of time before really I guess the law will be going through its, if the administration proceeds with it, it would be happening next January, I guess, Maria, going through the legislators. And so that's some time between now and then to get feedback. And the way I understood the societies, they're waiting on our feedback. They are saying that we're the ones who deal with this the most. We're the most aware of what's happening in other states. We're the ones who have our noses in the law and rules all the time in reviewing applications. They want to know what we recommend. Up till now, we've just talked. We really haven't recommended. So I think it is at this point on us, or that's the next step, is to propose to the societies what we think is right, and then what or the best next step, which is what we're coming up with, and that's based on what our legislators' feedback to us is. It's based on what other states are doing and what our situation is, and so there's a reason that we're proposing these things. So anyway, and the other thing is, I don't think we will be able to eliminate the threat of a rule or law being challenged by somebody with a master's degree. Well, we've written we're proposing this statute in a broad way that gives us discretion. When we get the rules written and based kind of on Louisiana's, I'm just using the master's as an example now, based on Louisiana's kind of framework about what undergraduate degrees work best for getting the master's approved. There will still be challenges later. It will have the laws and the rules written, and there will be challenges. So I think that will always be the potential for that. So I think in the interim, we have a draft of rules, which are, whether you want to call that a policy or not, that guide us, and we do the best we can.
This is Steve. I guess one of the things that bothers me a little bit about in A1, the long sentence that talks about the engineering curriculum of 4 years or more, or a postgraduate curriculum. We know that the engineering curriculum requires 4 years of experience, but just the way that reads, I think it's going to be confusing because we know there's more work to be done on the postgraduate engineering curriculum for an applicant to be able to become licensed. So I guess what I'm wondering, Maria, if that could be made into 2 sentences where we talk about the engineering curriculum, and then when we talk about the master's degree or PhD, could we add something that lets someone reading this know that there's more to come?
Yes. And so when I was making the changes to this rule, there was also the option to do, you know how we have like A1, 2, 3. There was the consideration of doing A1 and then doing, instead of putting this engineering, the post-grad thing right in 1, we could break it out and do 2. So graduation from an approved engineering technology post-grad curriculum of 2 years or more, experience and examination. Because you're right, that does insinuate that 4 years of progressive experience is sufficient if you have a master's. So if that's not the will of the committee, then we do need to change that. We could, I guess that poses the question then, though, how many years of experience do we want? And from what this is how I've been, hearing it, is that we don't really know, that it varies depending on what the master's is, depending on what the undergrad might be in. So I'm very happy to, I could change that, make it A2 instead, take out that language from there, put it in another section of its own. But I would just need pretty clear direction on what you guys want to require for experience. I mean, I could add language of as specified by the board in rule. But yeah, I'm open to suggestion and feedback on that part.
My thinking is that I know there's a lot more work to be done on this, but we're not thinking that it's going to be an undergraduate in something other than engineering and a master's degree in engineering and 4 years experience. We're thinking that it's going to be something on the line of 8 years experience, and that may vary with what the undergraduate degree is in. But my point wasn't necessarily to specify a number of years, but even if we said we made it a separate, like you said, A2, but even if we said a postgraduate of an engineering curriculum, and just to note that the length of experience will be specified in the rules of the board or something like that.
Okay. I will add that caveat, kind of work on that language a little bit, add it in a different sentence, and then I'll send that to you all for approval before my final, draft is sent to the department. That's how it works.
Well, Maria, this is just me talking. Sure. Everybody else on the board may not agree with it. I just want to make sure
everybody else is on board with that. Yeah.
One other thing I might say, I think it's possible to get a master's degree in under 2 years.
Okay, so is that something that you want to take out the 2 years qualifier and just have it as post-grad?
Well, what Well, how would you define post-grad?
Anything above the bachelor's degree.
I think what we're really talking about is a master's degree. So if you say post-grad and leave off the 2 years, if that describes someone with a master's degree, I think that's good.
Okay. So I do want to get feedback, just because we're not going to be able to have another meeting between now and the 3rd, to discuss this. So regarding the comment about how much experience will be required for those holding postgraduate degrees, specifying that. I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page so that when I send out that language, we can move forward on it. Or if there's other suggestions.
Yeah, this is Ricky. When I read what you wrote, Maria, I really didn't remember that we discussed and that having anything different than 4 years of experience required. And so I was okay with if the master's and the rest of the education was going to be acceptable to us, that I guess I was thinking we would be saying that education was basically equivalent and that we were still on 4 years. But I'm okay if the rest of the board wants to make it a longer experience. I'm okay with that. I mean, the other master's language that we had that was repealed called for 20 years. So that's that was one precedent, I guess. So anyway, I was thinking 4, but if people think longer, that'd be good. The other thing is, Steve, when it says postgraduate, I think Maria mentioned this earlier. So that would bring into play if somebody's got a PhD in engineering. I guess I don't know if you can have a PhD in engineering and not have a master's in engineering, but anyway, it would accept either master's or PhD if we leave it postgraduate, and I think I'm okay with that, having that flexibility, but want to hear what others think.
Ricky, can you read?
Rob, I'm here by phone, and I'm good with all that.
Say it again, Robert.
Can you restate the 4 years? I got a little confused there.
Yeah. I was, the way Maria has written it would allow somebody with a master's of engineering that we would approve to then be required to get 4 years of experience, just like somebody who's got a bachelor's in engineering. And I'm okay with that, because I thought the way we were gonna define the master's degree in engineering was what we felt like education wise it would be equivalent. But if we're thinking we ought to have a longer experience requirement than 4 years, if that's what people are thinking, I'm okay with that too. I didn't remember that being part of our discussion, and I think I'm okay with just 4 years of experience. But I'm open to hearing what people think.
Hey, Steve, this is Alton. Maria, go ahead. I yield the floor to you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say one thing. I mean, from my perspective, just like legally, it makes more sense, and it's a defensible argument to say, if you are going to hold these two equivalent, then you would require the same amount of experience as, the bachelor degree, the 4-year degree. So anyway, that is more helpful in moving it along. But anyhow, I'll defer to you all on how you want to handle that.
Steve, this is Alton. I know one of the things that we've looked at is what the undergraduate degree was actually in. I mean, if it was in history or English literature or art, generally, I don't think we've looked as favorably on that, but if it were in either the sciences or math, I think we've given it more due consideration. Do we want to stipulate something like that?
This is Steve. Let me tell you why I was thinking that we as a board or a committee were thinking that it was more than 4 years. It seems to me, even before we were assigned this task to consider technology degrees, I'd already been thinking about this. And I was thinking that here's the way my logic went. If we were going to allow someone who has an undergraduate degree, a non-engineering undergraduate degree, and a master's degree in engineering to sit for the exam after a certain amount of experience, then it would need, I'm thinking that it would need to be a similar length than what we're going to propose for the technology degrees, because I really think that even though we've determined that the technology engineering degree is not as robust as the EAC degree, it's certainly a more engineering undergraduate education than, say, a degree in math or biology. So I was thinking about making those two equivalent more than making a master's degree equivalent to a EAC undergraduate degree. So that's where my logic was going, and maybe that was just me thinking that, and we didn't discuss it, but I thought that we did.
Steve.
Patrick.
What I was thinking was that we felt like with say a math or biology degree undergraduate, that the master's degree on top of that kind of fills in the engineering hole, to make it so a math or biology undergraduate plus an engineering graduate degree is in essence equal to an undergraduate engineering degree only. And so I was thinking that's the way we were looking at it.
Steve, this is Robert. I can certainly go along with having a longer and understand the logic of having a longer period than 4 years. Well, I just can. I mean, because we're really talking about what degree is your qualifying degree and what makes that equivalent. We said that a 4-year ABET EAC is a qualifying degree, and now a master's degree from with an approved EAC undergrad and 4 or 8 years experience is qualifying, and then an ETAC from a 4-year more year is qualifying. So I tend to agree with you. I don't know that a master's program in engineering, especially not knowing what your undergraduate degree is in, gives you any leg up or much of a leg up on an engineering technology degree.
I think an engineering technology undergrad degree is probably better than most any undergraduate degree other than an EAC engineering degree.
Is there some logic into sticking with 8 year or going with 8 years with a master's degree, and with the 8 years being equivalent to what we've described in for the technology degree?
Ricky, I think that's what I was thinking in the back of my mind, but if we can just have some language that doesn't make someone who might read this after it's potentially passed by the legislature to think that it's 4 years, just by, like I was suggesting to Maria, to have some language that says the board will specify that in a rule. You know, when we get into this with what Robert sent out from Louisiana, it could be that there are some combinations that we might recommend something less than 8, but I personally don't see it being 4.
Well, it seems like that could be accomplished with what Maria was talking about a little while ago, is creating a A2. Sorry. Yeah. And they want breaking out the masters to be A2, where A1 is the undergraduate engineering degree requiring 4 years, and A2 would be the postgraduate degree. And but I don't think it would work that great to not name a number of years in the statute and say, according to the rules, when we don't have a rule yet. I probably feel more comfortable just saying 8 there. But I don't know how it would work if we didn't state a number of years there. We've got a number of years stated for the undergraduate engineering, and we've got a number of years we're proposing for the technology. It seems like we ought to go ahead in the statute and state a number of years for the master's degree and just state 8 right there.
You know, I think if we say, of course, we've got to factor in, I guess we're still going to factor in the Louisiana method where the undergraduate degree couldn't just be anything. Is that still where we're headed?
Steve, this is Alton. That's what I was saying earlier. Do we want to recommend that it be in either the math or science category?
I think that is where we're headed. I thought that's where we were headed, but I don't think we should I don't think we should add that language to the statute, because it may not just be math and science, when we go to write the rule. I think the statute staying broad might serve us better and get into the details with the rule.
And Steve, I think your first suggestion maybe to Marie, although I don't, Marie, you read a lot more laws than I have, but I don't know how many of them refer to a rule. But I do like the thing of saying this will be the experience will be 8 years unless the board decides otherwise, and that's not the right word, but then that gives us that flexibility as we evaluate degrees or using our rule to make those determinations. But it establishes a baseline, I believe, at that 8-year threshold.
You know, if you look back through the years at the bills that have been approved to allow one with a master's degree to become licensed, I don't think the experience has ever been less than 8 years. Matter of fact, it's always been like 12 to 20, if I recall correctly.
It was 20 last. That was what was repealed a couple of years ago, was the law with the 20 years requirement. But I think what Robert said sounds like a good idea. If there's a way we can say the 8 years, but put in some flexibility for the board discretion, I think that's a good idea.
I'd agree with
Okay,
that.
so I want to make sure I'm understanding. So we're going to do an A2 breaking out postgraduate engineering curriculum. And that's going to be decoupled, the decoupling language, with a specific record of 8 years or more progressive experience. And then you all want language that's going to say in special situations, or that the board has the discretion to approve based on the applicant's degrees and maybe undergrad.
Maria, this is Alton. One of the things that may help us is in other locations, we specifically say of a grade and character that indicates to the board that the applicant may be competent to practice engineering. Okay. We can leave it at that.
Okay.
Or
are you
incorporate
saying
that language into the master's requirement.
Okay. Are you saying, though, don't specify the 8 years, or do specify the 8 years and then say or?
No, I think we got two things going on here. One is the experience requirement, and one is what the undergraduate degree is in. And what I was saying for what the undergraduate degree is in, we can say of a grade and character, etc. For the experience requirement, I also support a minimum of 8 years.
Okay. Gotcha. And so that's going to be like the technology degree, and that's a hard and fast rule. I mean, that's a hard, you know what I mean? There's no flexibility there if I include it in the statute, 8 years.
I was thinking, Marie, that what we were wanting was to introduce some flexibility to say, when you create the A2 for the postgraduate degree, that when you got to the experience part, you would say, and with a specific record of 8 or more years of progressive experience of the type, whatever, and somewhere introduce at the end of that the number of years at the discretion of the board may be different or something. Somehow introduce some flexibility at the end of that to give the board discretion to differ from the 8 years. And I'll follow Robert's line and see. I'm sure you can say that much better than I could, as far as the right way to say that.
At this point, I'm not really sure. I can try.
Okay.
Just one thing I want to point out in crafting this language is that 8 years, as your board attorney, I would have a hard time saying that you were going to get that, even if we do have the discretionary language, built in there, that I would have a hard time telling you all that you would have the authority to approve someone with less than 8 years, which I'm getting the, message that you all would not be in favor of approving someone with less than 8 years, but just wanted to point that out as a consideration. I could see the discretion being that, you'd require someone to have more than 8 years. That certainly wouldn't be a problem, but just kind of how I'm looking at it is I just want to make sure I'm tracking with you all that this is the intent.
My thinking is that the length of experience for a master's degree only should be the same as the technology plus master's degree.
I agree. This is Robert. I agree.
I agree as well.
This is
This
Alton.
is
I agree
Rob.
also.
I'm all good with that.
Michael, just for the
Rob,
record,
by the way, I
because,
forgot to note you were here.
yeah, I was going to just now do that. Thank you, sir.
Well, I really think that puts us in a pretty good place because look at the variety of pathways that we are proposing to create that haven't been available for applicants in the past. I think we're proposing a good thing. While at the same time doing our best to protect the public as we go forth. Any other comments?
I agree with what you just said, Steve. I think it most of these issues. Well, we've been talking about decoupling for a long time, and the masters we've actually done before a couple of times, so we have some experience with that. The technology is kind of a newer topic, but it comes in a category of we know that there's some difficulties with us being too out of step with all the states around us, and in the country. So it's all that feedback has led us here for good reason, I believe.
Hey, Steve, this is Alton again. Casey, are you still on the line with us?
Casey appears to have jumped off. She did send me a note that said she had a number of bills up for consideration today and that she would not be here the whole time.
One of the questions I wanted to ask her is at what point should we or can she take the information that we're providing and get it out to the professional societies for their review and consideration, and then beyond that, I know at one point she was talking about forming a committee to maybe address this issue and be prepared to respond to comments from society members. Does anybody have any thoughts about that?
Hey, Alton, this is Michael, and I think I'm getting this right with what Casey had said, but also just in my knowledge of the situation, it would be near impossible to get feedback before you all pass something out of this committee, and at which time we could then get Casey and other professional societies the information to disseminate to their membership.
This is Chris Gwaltney. And I'm affiliated with ASCE, and we can get this information out as soon as you give it to us.
Very good. Thanks, Chris.
Hey, Steve.
Go ahead, Ricky.
If as we are working with Maria on crafting this proposed legislation, is that appropriate to put a proposed legislation in front of the engineering societies?
I would just like to say, not that any of this is, confidential. I mean, this is a public meeting, but as far as, I just don't want to give the impression this is moving ahead when it's not, like, I guess, prematurely. So I would like to be able to speak with, just my chief and maybe the administration to see guidance on this before I give you guys any real answers on maybe the best move for that. Like I said, it's not that it's, a confidential matter, but I just don't want to move forward prematurely unless things are going forward and that I kind of have to go ahead from my higher up. So I appreciate the question.
I do. That makes sense. Would it be acceptable, or maybe the way to do it is for us as a committee craft some kind of a layman's summary of what we have been working on to propose, and do it in that context, not in legislation that we're crafting, but after getting input over the last 4 or 5 years on these topics, we are working on language in our laws and rules to do these things, and just have a layman's summary of decoupling of the master's degree in technology, and do that in some kind of acceptable language that the societies could disseminate. Would that be acceptable, Maria, in lieu of, instead of some marked up statute?
Yeah, I certainly see what you're saying. And it makes sense just because, like I said, all these, meetings are public record. And if anybody has been anywhere around, listening to this, I mean, it's been going on for the past years. Like I said, it's not a secret as far as like putting out, language and everything. I will double check on that. And I just don't want to give you an answer that's not correct. And I just truly don't know the answer of what's appropriate and what's not in this scenario. So I'd rather just double check it and be able to follow up with you.
Well, I can certainly understand that, Maria, because I don't think the department would want us to, present a proposed legislation when the department hadn't approved it officially and the governor's office hadn't, decided to include it in their package. But I think what was described might be an option, and we look forward to hearing what you think about that after you've talked with some other folks.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all's patience.
I guess as we wind down on our discussion on this, was someone else trying to talk?
I think someone hung up.
Okay.
I do have a quick question for everyone.
Go ahead.
I don't want to belabor the point by any means, but I just want to make sure. It's hard. Sometimes I can get lost in, all of this language and what's being required and what's being changed. So I just want to make sure that we're on the same page and that I have a good understanding of this. So if we break down the master's as its own section, I'm getting the idea that that would actually be the same requirements. It would mirror the requirements that someone has, that when someone holds the engineering technology undergrad. So I guess my question is, does specifying that engineering technology curriculum then make it a moot point to even specify and call that out when the standard we're saying is the master's degree or, postgraduate degree? So anyway, I just want to know, somebody can correct me if I'm misunderstanding this, but it almost seems like it's just saying you can have an undergraduate degree with a postgrad in engineering, or you can have, and that would include the engineering technology just by, the vagueness of that. And then, but then two, we go ahead and call it out and say that this is acceptable.
Maria, I think we'd be better off to specifically call out the engineering technology separately. But again, I think one of the things that we've talked about is adding to the information on the postgraduate degree that it would be of a grade and character, blah, 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 approvable by the board or something like that.
And it would be
language.
specified in rule.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. That's kind of like the deferring factor there. That helps.
Just for my own benefit, I wanted to summarize this kind of quickly so I understand all of these alternative pathways to licensure require some kind of education and experience and the passing both exams, the engineering intern exam and the PE exam. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, then just to summarize, then for a technology degree, accredited technology degree, an applicant would need to have a master's degree from a engineering school that the undergraduate program is EAC accredited and have 8 years experience. One with a master's degree or higher with an undergraduate degree in something other than engineering would need to have 8 years of experience and pass both exams. And then as far as the decoupling, the language merely takes away the order that was previously prescribed as far as experience in the exam.
That is correct.
Okay, then, so go ahead. Is that Alton?
No, it's Ricky. But I'll wait, Steve.
Go ahead, Ricky.
Okay. Well, I'm thinking with what your summary, Steve, and I want to make sure, Maria, the answer that you heard, I want to make sure that I understood it. So we are going to leave the engineering technology, create the A2 and leave it separate. No, I'm sorry. The masters will be A2 and that'll be a separate paragraph from technology. Is that, even though, as you pointed out, it's a little bit redundant, but we are going to still have those be 3 separate paragraphs. Is that right, Maria?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And I think it may be, I like that too, because of the prevalence of engineering technology degrees in other states, being named. And it may even make more sense eventually when we have the rules defining the undergraduate degrees or that work with the masters. It might make more sense that we mention engineering, that we have something separate for engineering technology at that point. But okay, anyway, I heard that.
Is there any more discussion on the document that we've been reviewing? I heard someone, but I couldn't tell who it was.
Hey, Steve, this is Alton. I noticed that Wanda, if we're concluded with that part of our discussion, and I think it was a very good discussion, I think Wanda had another couple of agenda items that she wanted to add to today's meeting. Hey, Wanda, I guess you're still on the line. Is that correct?
Yeah, but Michael said he didn't think we could discuss them since it wasn't on the original agenda.
Maria, is that the case if they're going to, I believe there's, Wanda, is it an application that needs to be reviewed?
Not an application. One of the persons, he's trying to sit for the FE exam, and his degree is deficient, and he wants to know if the board could waive the deficiencies. And the other person, she got an extension on her comedy application a year ago to get CLEP credits. She still hasn't gotten those credits, and she wants another extension.
Okay, Maria, are we allowed to vote on items that weren't on the agenda?
Maria, before you answer that, this is Alton. I go to a lot of council meetings and county commission meetings, and normally if these items have been taken up before in prior business at prior meetings, then that would come under the heading of old business and be eligible for consideration in this meeting. But I'll bow to your legal counsel on that.
Thanks, Alton. No, that's helpful. And I was going to say, this is a tricky one. You don't want to say no, but technically it is supposed to be on the agenda. However, the caveat is if you can get it under old business in some way that maybe this has been previously discussed, and it's appropriate to move forward.
So Maria, to clarify, that would mean that would these specific items have had to come up, or because reviews take place so frequently, I believe that, is that what we're saying about, or old business, or do they specifically have to come up with these names?
You know, I'm not completely sure on this. I do think it is good to speed up, applicants and their wait time, and that is something that the committee routinely does. So if it is the will of the committee to take this up today, I feel like you could technically say it could fall under old business.
Well, I think, is it usually our practice to have or offer the opportunity for someone who is up for review to be present, or does that not make a difference?
Hey, Michael, if it's okay, this is Robert Campbell. Just kind of, as I look at the two requests, I don't know what the time sensitivity is on either one of those requests. The FE, since it's offered multiple times, it's not like we have to get it in for the October-April timeframe. They have the ability to do that at any time. So I don't know that waiting until our next meeting keeps that from happening. And on the CLEP credits, again, I'm not sure. I mean, she's waited a year and hasn't gotten them. So I don't know why we would want to or need to do that. I don't think there's a time issue here
Well,
that we're trying to move something along.
I'm sorry, Mr. Campbell, her application expires later this month.
Okay, I'm
so,
sorry. I didn't hear that part of it.
right, and that's why she's wanting an extension. She said for a couple of months, but she already had a year, so I don't know.
Yeah. And just on the FE thing, just real quick, I mean, it seems to me like there are multiple people that take the FE without having all of their all their education completed. So I don't know why there would be any barrier there, but that's maybe speaking out of turn. So
Yeah, they don't have to have approval to sit. He just wants to make sure that he will be able to be certified in Tennessee. And of course, if he didn't meet the educational component, then we couldn't certify him. But that's not preventing him from actually sitting. He can sit for it at any time.
Right, right. And again, there are a lot of people that take that exam without having all their courses, and we certify them later. I think, well, that's something that he crosses after he determines if he passes it or not. But again, I may be speaking out of turn. So
Yeah, his isn't urgent. I don't think we can wait and talk about him next month. But Miss Nayak, or however you pronounce her name, she's the one that really needs an answer soon, if possible. So we'll know if we'll let her application just expire and she'll have to apply again, or if we'll extend her application date.
So
And
is
it
there
could go under old business because hers has been discussed previously.
Yeah, I was gonna say if that's old business, then I don't mind making a motion to extend her another year to get the CLEP course done.
This is Rob. I'll second that.
very well? We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
this is real quick, Steve. The only discussion on that I would say is because I don't know that we want this to be a norm. So I would just add, as part of the discussion, that we have had a rather different year where it makes things a little bit more difficult to do, and maybe we voice that we have taken that into consideration in granting her this extra period of time, so that it doesn't become something that becomes normative.
Like that, and I can add that to the motion that we
And I don't know
approve.
that it needs to be, Ricky. I just think it needs to be as part of the discussion, you know.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Is that okay with you, Rob? Rob, you seconded the motion. I just wanted to make sure you're okay with that change that Robert suggested.
Mr. Barrick, you're still on mute. It's possible that we may have had a connection error with Mr. Barrick.
Robert, would you want to second it?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Steve. Robert may want to second that since he's a voting member.
Yeah, let me go ahead and second that, a revised motion, and just call it a new motion. That way we don't have to worry. Well, of course, we would have to act on the one that's on the floor, though. So we probably have, since we can't get Rob on, we may have to deny it and come back to the other.
Well, I think officially the previous motion died for a lack of second, since we couldn't confirm that Rob would make that change. So if
Very good.
Hey, this is Rob. I'm sorry. I went through a hole, but I'm good with it. I'm sorry about that. Apologize.
Very good. Thank you, Rob. So I guess we conduct a roll call vote, and I think since this deals with an application, the three board members are the ones that would vote.
Yes, sir. I'm prepared to call the roll if you're ready and there's no more discussion.
Go ahead, Michael.
Mr. Barrick.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Bursai.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you all for that.
Very well. And the other, I guess, application will be dealt with at our next meeting, correct?
Yes, sir. And
Is there any other thing to come before the committee?
Well, scheduling. Let me see here. We were set to have this meeting on May 6th. We bumped it up for the legislative proposal deadline. The next regularly scheduled meeting would be full board on June 2nd. So that would mean the committee meeting is June 1. Is that all right? Do you want to come back sooner or keep 6/1?
Hey, Michael, is that correct? It looked like June 2nd was what we had advertised for the committee, and
Oh,
then the meeting was on the
you're
3rd.
you're right. I'm sorry, I didn't see that. I wasn't looking at that column. The full board's on the 3rd and the committee's on the 2nd.
Okay, no worries. I just know we had to advertise that, and I thought that. Will that be an in-person meeting, Michael?
It very well could be. Yes. We're looking, I think that the wheels have been set in motion to begin in-person meetings here. I think there's gonna actually be some here in May. But we're still working out general public attendance, filming, cameras, attendance policies and whatnot. So I'm going to say yes, that'll most likely be an in-person meeting, but there could be a caveat or two with that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Hey, Michael, this is Alton. I know we've talked about this, but I'm not sure we ever asked Maria to proceed. But we talked about, while we perfect and finalize the laws portion of what we talked about today, we had also mentioned going back and looking at my preliminary draft of the changes to the rules, and let Maria put that in a better format, so that we might be in a position to consider that at that June meeting. Is it the will of this committee that we ask her to proceed with that?
Alton, this is Robert. I mean, I think that's fine. I think that's a good step forward. Obviously depending on her availability and other things that are in front of her.
This is Maria. I can certainly have you all a draft before the June meeting. I'm happy to do that.
Thank you, Maria. And by the way, again, I want to reiterate what everybody else said. Excellent job of cleaning up the mess that I made. Thank you.
Thank you, Alton. You did a great job, honestly. It was a great framework to work from, so I really appreciate it.
I was just looking back at my notes from previous meetings, and seems like we have dealt with the master's degree situation, the decoupling situation, and the technology degree situation, but we haven't dealt with the foreign degree. Is there any desire to include that in the proposal?
I just want to say one thing before any discussion on that. When I was reevaluating my notes and kind of drafting and editing the statute and looking at the rules too, I was under the impression that the discussion previously was that the way that the foreign degree set up in the rules has been working, and that we weren't gonna, we didn't need to change anything on that. There again, I'm happy to. That was my understanding, was that we kind of had a good process and with the evaluation of the foreign degrees, and that we didn't need to change it. But if you do, I'm happy to. I just need more, direction on that.
I think you may be right, Maria. I think we did determine that we are approving foreign degrees under the, I guess, engineering curriculum of 4 more years approved by the board. So then I guess we could down the road have some rules that spoke of the Washington Accord and the other thing we think is relevant. So committee members, do you think we're in good shape as far as the Tennessee code with foreign degrees?
Steve, this is Robert. Yes,
Steve,
sir.
Steve, this is Alton. I agree with Robert. I think we've been through that track now several times and have experience with that one. I think all of us may be fairly comfortable with the methodology we currently use with the Washington Accord in place. And if there are any questions for somebody that's outside the Washington Accord, we can defer it to either NCAAS or Dr. Smith for review to determine equivalency.
Very well. I apologize for bringing that up. You all just reminded me of what I should have remembered on my own. So was there anything else to come before the committee? Michael, you have anything else?
No, sir, not for this meeting.
So the plan would just be to meet at our normal time on June the 2nd.
I'm okay with that. As long as there's no need to meet prior to that, then we'll just keep it planned for June 2nd.
Okay. Any committee member have anything else? Well, I suspect I can declare us adjourned, or should I have a motion?
I can make a motion that we adjourn.
A second?
Second.
Michael, you can decide if you need a
Yep.
roll call vote or if that's sufficient.
No, sir, that's it. We don't need a roll call to adjourn. So thank you all for joining up in the special session.
Thanks to everybody, and a particular thanks to Maria. Have a good day.
Very much. See y'all.
Thanks, guys. See y'all.
Thanks.